I truly don't envy the lawyers or anyone else involved in this chaotic legal saga with Blake Lively. Leslie Sloan and Ryan Reynolds Evan. Though Leslie and Ryan are technically no longer active parties, that doesn't make it any easier for those still dealing with their tactics, constant demands, and what multiple people behind the scenes describe as relentless intimidation and strategic obstruction. I've seen how it plays out firsthand, how people are worn down, how the other side seems to win not just because they're right, but because they exhaust everyone around them into submission. They push people to their limits with scare tactics and pressure, and honestly, that's how they've managed to secure some of the favorable rulings they've gotten so far. When Leslie made the decision to subpoena journalists who had spoken, with Wayfarer, everything shifted. You saw in my previous video how those journalists were dragged into illegal mess declarations were signed under pressure. And now the debate is whether any of those can be withdrawn or corrected. That's still up in the air. But I do know from my sources that people working on this are incredibly drained. And yet when something revealing is uncovered, retaliation follows like clockwork, creating this ripple effect across the case. Currently, Justin Baldoni's lawsuit has been dismissed, but there's still a very active case, Jennifer Abel's against Stephanie Jones. And that's where attorney Jen Abel seems most determined to fight, because she believes the most serious injustice happened there. The issue she's running into, accessing enough information to prove her claims. As I've said before, you need strong evidence before bringing a case to court. But in a situation like Jen's, she already knows what took place. She's just struggling to retrieve the proof. According to Jen, a company named Van Zen Inc. was used as a legal vehicle to obtain her private information. A subpoena was issued, using Van Zan's name to request her data, supposedly making it look legitimate, but according to her, it was simply a front to justify accessing her private phone contents. The kicker? Van Zan Inc. is not cooperating, which is why Jen's legal team has now filed a motion to compel. This motion, submitted by her attorney, LNGOP, pertains to the ongoing case against Stephanie Jones and Jones Works. Requests that Van Zen Inc., who was subpoenaed back on April 21, 2025, just after it was revealed that they were used for the data requests, be forced to produce all related documents. The claims against Jones and her firm revolve around a serious accusation that in August 2024, just before Jen was set to leave Jones Works, Stephanie Jones allegedly took possession of Jen's phone, accessed it, and downloaded its contents. What happened next, according to the filing, was a coordinated effort between Jones and Blake Lively to transfer that data to Blake's legal team. The mechanism used was a subpoena issued under the Van Zen v. Does 1-10 case. Filed in New York State Supreme Court in late September 2024, the motion claims that this action had no real legal merit. It was essentially a skeleton complaint for breach of contract involving unnamed defendants who were never identified or served. Importantly, there's no logical connection between Jen Abel and Van Zan Inc. or the breach of contract claim itself. In short, the case didn't make sense. Sit didn't hold water. And yet, through that action, Blake Lively obtained private data from Jen's phone, including confidential communications and legally privileged messages that are now at the center of the ongoing dispute. After the subpoena's return date, the entire Van Zan case was quietly dismissed without any hearings or judicial assignments. But by then, it had already served its purpose. Blake had what she wanted. In discovery, Blake admitted she received information through Vans. That admission alone confirms the strategy worked, successfully funneling sensitive materials from Jones to Blake under the radar. What's even more disturbing is that Blake's legal team is defending the Van Zen subpoena as completely legitimate, calling it a standard investigative tactic to uncover unknown actors in legal disputes. But here's the thing. Blake already admitted she used that subpoena to gain access to Jen's phone data. That admission alone is incredibly telling. I'm honestly relieved that Jen's team is spotlighting how Blake used this tactic and that it's now on the record in court filings. The fact that Blake Lively confirmed in discovery that Van Zen was how she got the contents of Jen Abel's phone, that could be a turning point. I'd genuinely love to hear how they plan to justify any connection between Van Zen Inc., and Jennifer Abel. There was no contract, no agreement, nothing linking Jen and Van Zandt professionally. Jen didn't work with them, nor was she employed by them. She wasn't represented by them, and she's definitely not affiliated with Blake Lively, who allegedly used Van Zandt as a legal conduit. In truth, Jen's only connection is to Justin, who Blake clearly doesn't favor. The Van Zandt case supposedly involved contractual breaches by parties tied to Van Zandt, yet Jen had zero involvement in any such contract. None of it lines up. What's even more revealing is Blake's team openly admitting in public filings that they obtained access to Abel's messages through the Van Zandt subpoena. Previously, the court expressed doubt, noting a lack of clarity on whether the material came from that source. Blake's attorneys have essentially argued that the ends justify the means, claiming the Van Zandt case helped them get access to private texts. But using a fake lawsuit to collect confidential data isn't just improper, it's alarming, especially when the lawsuit had nothing to do with Jen or her conduct. Even worse, there's uncertainty about whether Jones ever submitted anything in response to that subpoena. Was the Van Zandt case even real? Or was it a smokescreen to hide the fact that Jones had already leaked Jen's private data to Blake? That's the heart of Abel's legal battle. Imagine being in Jen's shoes, having your personal phone tied to your iCloud, seized by your employer, who had previously promised to simply transfer the number. Now, your private life could be in the hands of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. That alone is terrifying. Consider the personal data stored on your phone. The idea that someone with a grudge or just a plan could access it is horrifying. John's already suffered the fallout. But if there's one takeaway here, it's this. Always unlink your Apple ID and never use your personal device as your professional phone. You only realize these lessons after the damage is done. Jen has since served a subpoena on Van Zandt, demanding documentation regarding the use and distribution of her stolen phone data. The original subpoena requested 11 categories of materials, which have since been narrowed down. She now seeks the actual subpoena sent to Jones under the Van Zandt case. The responsive documents and communications between Van Zandt and Jones or their attorneys. Additionally, she's requested records revealing Van Zandt's internal structure and ownership. Though some of this could be pulled from state records, her team is going straight to the source. They argue it's valid to seek non-privileged records from third parties, especially when those documents are crucial to Jen's claims that Jones accessed her phone and cloud account illegally even after her employment ended. Her complaint includes allegations of violations of federal wiretap laws. Jones did hand over some documents supposedly obtained through Van Zandt, but not all of them. It's clear Jen's legal team suspects Blake's side still holds back key materials. Wayfarer has already acknowledged receiving some of this data, but the original subpoena has yet to be produced. That's deeply concerning, especially considering Blake has accused others of hiding documents. While she herself refuses to turn over medical records she previously agreed to provide to support her emotional distress claims, she even informed the court early on that she would deliver a copy of the subpoena, and yet it's still missing. This has become a pattern. Delay, deny, and deflect. Blake appears to be intentionally withholding critical discovery materials, likely to obstruct Jen's case from moving forward. Her tactics have slowed proceedings and undermined efforts to amend claims, directly contributing to parts of this case being struck down. It's a calculated form of legal stonewalling that, frankly, could backfire in a major way if exposed fully. They continue pressing claims about procedural abuse, yet without obtaining that subpoena copy. They remain unable to amend or expand the allegations, something Blake seems to be stalling deliberately. Whether it's sharp legal maneuvering or a tactic to drag things out until the opposition gives up, the result is the same, exhausting their resources and patience. The 5 modified requests are tightly tailored to gather evidence supporting the claim that Jones misused confidential data from Jen's seized phone and unlawfully monitored her via cloud access post-employment violations of federal wiretap laws. These requests also aim to confirm Jen's suspicion that Jones funneled that data to Blake before any subpoena was served, and that the bogus lawsuit was merely a front to make it look legitimate. They're asserting that Van Zandt is nothing more than a front company controlled by Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. They believe documentation from New York will confirm this, while California records, ALEGEDLY, already list Blake as a principal. However, it's the New York filings Blake hasn't turned over. In response, Blake's team argues undue burden and suggests Jen could get everything she needs from Stephanie Jones instead. But Jones hasn't produced a thing. She's also invoked attorney-client privilege and work product protection, which the narrowed scope of the requests now undercuts. If there are any lingering confidentiality concerns, the court can address them with a protective order. And let's be honest, the idea that Jen's stolen phone data is now confidential or privileged is ironic beyond belief. It's like they're weaponizing confidentiality to protect what they wrongfully took. Subpoenas themselves aren't protected, and Blake had even told the press she'd provide one in court earlier. Blake's team argued the information source couldn't be confirmed, so the judge dismissed the claim. But now we're seeing that the Van Zandt subpoena is indeed the origin, and yet Blake's resisting its release. There's no requirement that plaintiffs exhaust all party discovery before going after third parties for relevant materials, especially when those third parties are potentially involved in a scheme. That's what Jen's team is arguing. Blake's group used the Van Zandt shell to secretly transfer stolen content from Jones, bypassing proper legal processes. The judge had recently ruled that 2 TAG employees could be subpoenaed for similar reasons, so it's going to be tough for Blake's side to now argue against Jen doing the same thing. It's consistent precedent. The organizational and ownership records Van Zandt holds aren't available from Jones. They must come directly from the company. That's why Jen's side is demanding court-ordered compliance, full production of materials, no more excuses or stall tactics, despite publicly saying she'd turn over the subpoena and even confirming that she expected to during litigation. Blake is now resisting. It's classic deflection. She's playing the same manipulative game we've seen before, projecting cooperation in the media while stonewalling in court. Jen's team has already issued the subpoena on April 21st. They included a copy of the case docket notice and even the deadline article, where Blake's attorneys man it. Phelps and Phillips and Wilkie Farr and Gallagher defended the Van Zandt action and subpoena. Interestingly, it turns out Van Zandt is now represented by a completely different firm, Zuckerman Spetter LLP, that raises eyebrows. Minot issued the subpoena, but no longer represents the entity. That's suspicious. The document requests seem pretty basic and fair. First, materials showing Van Zandt's internal makeup org charts, names of officers, directors, subsidiaries, parents, and affiliates. It's widely believed Blake is listed as CEO in California. Another key request is any documents identifying shareholders and communications within the Van Zandt lawsuit, especially those exchanged with Stephanie Jones, her PR firm, or anyone acting on their behalf. They also want every subpoena Van Zandt issued and any responsive documents received from third parties. Seems more than fair. What's frustrating is how manipulators spin the narrative. They demand transparency from others, but hide behind legalese when asked to produce the same. It's the kind of hypocrisy we always see with narcissistic behavior. They promise to play fair, but when it comes down to delivering, they stall. And the more Blake delays, the more it seems like she's betting on the judge tossing Jen's case altogether. Maybe the court says, "Oh, nothing to see here. Stephanie's innocent." I can't help but feel suspicious, like, "Oh, I'm Judge Lyman, and my brother's tight with Selma's husband, and hey, well, I'm brokering film deals and rubbing shoulders with Blake Lively." Okay, not best friends, but you get the drift. Honestly, I'm losing faith in this judge. After watching how he handled that motion to compel, was shady. If he grants their motion, but turns around and denies this one, better believe I'm giving him the biggest side eye. And if he dares to throw out Jen's case against Stephanie Jones, then any remaining belief I had in the fairness of the Southern District of New York will be gone. All it would confirm is what we already fear, that people with status, cash, and powerful friends can manipulate the system, scare people into silence, and use fake lawsuits to move private evidence around like chess pieces. Jen's personal data has literally become ammunition used against her to cast her as some kind of villain. It's disgusting. What's wild is how Deadline covered it. They wrote, "The lawsuit unearthed the Wayfarer party's documented plan. In their own words, in their own text messages, to destroy Blake Lively. A plan executed without transparency, disclosure, or notice to Miss Lively or to the public. Acting in a way they thought would be untraceable. So Blake's playing the victim here, like they were sneaky, so now she gets to be sneaky back. Article also has this line: "We have absolutely nothing to hide," and Miss Lively voluntarily disclosed the subpoena in her first filing, knowing it would be produced during discovery. Yet now, she's fighting tooth and nail to avoid turning it over. I'm thrilled that this got included. Let the judge see their public statements and compare them to their legal tactics. Ezra Hudson and Michael Gadadel said it themselves. Watch them now try to wriggle out of it by saying, "Oh, that was outside the courtroom." Doesn't count. Finally, someone's stepping in to force their hand. But some days, it's hard to stay hopeful for anyone tangled in this nightmare because of how manipulative and cruel Blake and Ryan are. And yeah, I said it, even if Justin doesn't appeal, or Jen's case gets thrown out, my view of Blake Lively and her husband won't budge. They strike me as calculated, malicious, and surrounded by a ring of enablers who get a kick out of watching the less powerful squirmel, just to preserve their pristine image. Even if they win, they've already shown who they are. At least now the judge has a chance to step in and force Van Zandt to come clean. We'll know their response in a few days. So, what do you think? Are you relieved this is finally happening, or frustrated it's taken so long? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell so you're first to know when a new video drops. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.